Today we'll take a closer look of the Arex Delta Gen 2. For those not familiar with the platform, the Arex Delta is a polymer-framed striker-fired handgun with concealed carry in mind. In this video, we'll look at the Gen 2, what are its features, what is different from the Gen 1, and how does it compare to the competition. The main features of the Delta are that it has fully ambidextrous controls, so magazine release button and slide stop slide release on both sides. It has 4 different sized replaceable back straps. It has a loaded chamber indicator, a striker indicator, and the whole gun is made in a way that is very slick and it does not snag on clothing. Additionally, the serialized part in the lower is connected to the locking block and trigger mechanism, which means that it's easily removable and you can get aftermarket grip modules and personalize your gun. So what's new with the Gen 2? It retains all of the good features of the original, but also brings some improvements. Now it's available in 3 different sizes. The M, which is the same compact size as the Gen 1, and the L, which is a full-sized handgun comparable to, let's say, Glock 17. They also have the X version, which we don't have here currently, but essentially it's a full frame size with a compact slide. They come in 3 different frame colors: the black, the FD, and this new cool-looking gray color. It seems like Arex is listening to the customers, because with the Gen 2 they addressed 2 of the most brought up issues of the Gen 1. So the grip texture and the optics. The Gen 2 grip module is ergonomically very similar to the first one. So it has the undercut, the beaver tail, the thumb rest, and of course 4 differently sized interchangeable back straps. But it has a different texture. So instead of those sharp protruding squares that can hurt your hand if you have a strong grip, this one features a smoother factory finish that feels and looks more like stippling. I think the overall feel in my hands is a big improvement over the Gen 1, but this grip texture still provides enough grip even for wet and slippery conditions. Creepy. The other 2 less visible but quite important improvements are the full-length rail. So now it has 3 instead of 1 slot for all of your Picatinny needs. And the second one is this a bit enlarged and flared Magwell. It doesn't seem much, but it helps. From my experience with the Gen 1, if you have big hands and you do fast reloads, sometimes the magazine can pinch you here. With the Gen 2, with just a little bit more of standoff, for me that problem is gone.
The sights are made of metal.
The sights are made of metal and are functionally the same as with the Gen 1. So you have this notch on the rear sight that you can use on a hard surface, a belt, or maybe a holster to facilitate a one-handed operation of racking the slide. The other side is serrated, so it reduces glare, but also it's a bit canted and made in a way that when you draw the handgun, maybe from concealment, it does not snag on your clothing. The front sight is a single post with a white dot in the middle. It's okay, it aligns well with the rear sight, but I personally prefer a slimmer front sight post. But the good news here is that on the Gen 2, the sights are standardized and you can replace them with any sights that fit, for example, a 6-hour P226, P320, or any other handgun that uses the same base. Let's look at the trigger. Well, the trigger on the Arex Gen 2 is very similar to the Gen 1. It's what Arex describes as a double action, but not what I would consider it normally. They say that it's double action because when you press the trigger, you do 2 functions. So you partially cock You partially cock the striker and then release it. But what I would consider a proper double action trigger is that with each trigger pull, you would also do that 2 actions, which this one does not. So functionally, I would consider this as a normal striker fire trigger, as you can find on Glocks or any other similar handguns. So here, when you apply more and more pressure, the trigger does not move. It has no creep, it only breaks. It has a very, very crisp break, which I prefer in triggers. Okay, now as we cycle it, we can look at the reset. The reset is audible and you can feel it. I personally really like this kind of trigger, but the Gen 2 has a similar issue as the Gen 1. When you get the gun brand new out of the factory, the trigger, especially pre-travel, is a bit mushy, a bit gritty, and the actual trigger weight is a bit higher than it should be. This is normal and happens because all of the surfaces are still a bit rough, and usually it goes away with maybe 200-300 rounds just with normal use, or even sooner if you are doing any dry fire. There is also a way where you can disassemble the trigger and polish it, but we will probably show that in another video. The Optics Ready version comes with a pre-cut slide and a cover plate, and 4 additional plates that fit most of the handgun optics on the market. What's interesting here is that Arex opted to go with a glass-filled polymer instead of steel, so essentially plastic. That way, the plates are lighter and have less impact on the workings of the slide, but they are still tough enough to hold zero and stand up to abuse. They achieve this by using high-strength polymers and threaded steel inserts. It's just weak plastic, it will never hold.
A few moments later.
I told someone I'll give him $5 if he can break it. No fucking way. Delta Gen 2 has the same disassembly mechanism as the Gen 1. It's very simple, intuitive, and it does not require you to press the trigger when you are disassembling the gun. Additionally, if your striker is cocked and you disassemble the gun, it will be released, but in a safe manner. Similar fashion as it would be with a decocker. So when you are disassembling the gun, there is no chance for accidental fire. Please don't try this at home. We did this in controlled manner on a shooting range, but even if you disassemble a gun with a loaded round in the chamber, it will not fire. The magazines stay the same as with the Gen 1, so they are backwards compatible, but since we are also getting a full frame version, we also get the longer, larger magazines. Now, of course, these do fit and work with the compact size, and I know that this makes sense to most of you, but judging from some of our comments on YouTube, I have to say it, but the small magazine does not fit the large frame size. Well, it does fit, but it does not work, okay? No worky. Yes, worky. During our testing, we tested a lot of different types of ammo, including hollow points, soft points, some rounds that you would consider a good defensive ammo, and we found no issues at all. Well, that was expected because I know that Arex tests all of their handguns before they leave the factory, and all of the handguns have to shoot at least a couple of rounds of +P+ ammunition without a problem. That is the same as they use for their 01 series of handguns, so we were not expecting issues, but we did test ammo and it ran flawlessly. So we asked our followers on Instagram what do they want to know about the new Delta Gen 2. and I will just go through the questions and answers as quickly as possible. When, where, and how much? End of January, Global Ordnance is importing these to the States, and as far as we know, they're already there, so soon. The price, MSRP, should be around where the Gen 1 was at the beginning. And if we look at the full-sized, optics ready, it'll be around $535 US. Threaded barrels, yes or no? We're not sure because there are no official information, but there were some rumors that they may come out with a tactical model with a threaded barrel, and that maybe the barrel will be also available separately for purchase. Does it fit in a Glock holster? As the Gen 1, the Gen 2 is a bit slimmer than Glock, very similar shape. It does fit in most Glock holsters, but it's a loose fit. For example, this is a level 3 retention holster from Ghost. This is for a Glock handgun. The Rex Delta fits in. It engages with all of the retention, releases properly, but since it's a bit slimmer, you have this loose fit that can annoy some people. The Gen 2 with the mounted light also fits in most Glock holsters that are meant for the same light. So this is a BGS holster, level 2 retention, and as you can see, even the passive retention holds it in, and you also still have the hood. And this is the Safariland. Also fits, the retention works. The Gen 2 does fit in the Gen 1 holsters. One of the concerns from our viewers was that on the Gen 1, it was a bit harder to rack the slide on a full magazine. I personally never had that problem, though it is harder to rack the slide if you have a fully loaded magazine, especially the +2 one. But I don't know, I don't think that's even a problem. I think this is normal for every handgun. You know, if you have a full magazine, there is more pressure on the slide, but as you can see right now, I didn't have to use any additional force. You just rack the slide, release it, and it works. The enlarged Magwell, does it work? I don't know, it seems to work for me, so yeah. Are the slides and grip modules interchangeable? Let's try out. Yes! Well, it does look a bit strange, but it functions normally, so yes, they are perfectly interchangeable. The loaded chamber indicator, does it work? Well, yes, of course it works. What it does is when you have a loaded round or an empty shell casing in the chamber, it will be raised. You can see it, though it's not that easily visible. I would not rely on it. But if you check it with your thumb, it is tactile. You will feel it. This also means that you can check if the chamber is loaded in a low light conditions.
Excuse me, so this gun is very good for blind people.
Striker indicator. Why? Well, it's not for everyone, but since it's an added feature and it does not reduce reliability, why not? I know for at least one example where you can use it. So when the striker is cocked, you can see this red dot. When you start to press the trigger, you can see that the striker indicator also pops out. So for example, this is your concealed carry gun. You load it, and now you want to put it in your holster. What you do is, of course, trigger finger off the trigger, and then you put your thumb where the striker indicator is. You push it in, and then in this configuration, you can safely put the handgun into the holster. Now, what happens is that in a case that something blocks the trigger, and you start to push the trigger, you will immediately feel the indicator pushing against your thumb. Now, your thumb may not be enough to prevent it to fire, but you will immediately feel it and you cannot mistake it for anything else because it can a bit hurt. So I think this is one of the actually quite good features that can be used in a real world scenario.
Stand by!
Готов. So, what are my thoughts on the Arex Delta Gen 2? Well, I have to be honest, I have some positive bias towards it because Arex is a Slovenian company, we are Slovenians, and we really like what they do with their quality firearm production, and if we can, we try to support them. But I also own the Gen 1, and I can tell you that the Gen 2 definitely have some maybe less noticeable but important improvements. For me, just the looks, the overall looks are better. The grip texture is not as intrusive and it's easier on your hand, but still provides enough grip for any situation. The enlarged Magwell is subtle, but it does its job properly. But there are also two things that I would personally change or improve. One is the magazine release button. Nothing wrong with it, and I understand that this shape was made so it's not intrusive and does not snag on clothing for concealed carry, and that you do not accidentally drop the magazine. But from a whole day of shooting, training, doing a lot of reloads, I can tell you that my thumb hurts just from pressing this button all the time. That's one thing. And the second thing is the trigger. Now, don't get me wrong, I really like the trigger on the Arex Delta, but how it comes from the factory, it's a bit mushy, a bit gritty, and it has heavier pull weight than when it's a bit worn in. Now, of course, this is normal, but what I would really prefer is that maybe they do that extra step at the factory and maybe polish the parts because that would make it perfect. I think those are the only gripes that I have with this handgun. Otherwise, I really like it. I'm actually proud that Arex is doing such a good job. Made by Slavs, approved by Slavs. Guys, thank you for watching and see you soon.